I'll take it as a no. Let's just
Those videos were helpful.
yes, yes.
What you posted.
Pardon me, I forgot to upload the last video. It's like too much work, but I'll do it today. This one and the last one as well.
Please, thank you.
Sure, definitely, no problem. Let's review monitoring and control project work here. We've started on this, right? But let's review in a scenario where we'll understand what you mean by monitoring and control overall. Here we normally monitor and control the actual project. So this is what we call actual project management on the ground. So here we need to understand what are the project management different components we address to, and if you really understood the way we discussed in the last time, we try to start with project integration management, which is a kind of umbrella activity, what we are studying right now. Then we move to different aspects of other projects where we'll try to understand how scope management, cost management, schedule management, resource management, and all these managements, total 9 of them, normally gets included in this umbrella activity called monitor and control project work in project integration management knowledge area. Let's try to understand from input tools and techniques and output perspectives. In inputs, we consider all the project management plan. If you're starting, you might start with all these project management plan, but if you're in a progress, then you might consider all the project management plans as an input. Project integration management plan is kind of one document, but all it encompasses all these 9 different project management thought processes where we have normally allocated to project scope management. So what's the overall scope? These are the core objective. This is where we kept our requirement list and so on and so forth. In project scope cost management objective, we might consider what type of cost we are talking about, what is the management reserve, what is the total cost of project couldn't exceed to, and the tracking of it, the review processes and all those things. So all these management plan include all such details. In addition to that, we have few documents where we normally start building these documents in the start or start reviewing these documents on week by week basis. That's a kind of thumb rule or a best practice. Many organizations might do bi-weekly as well, again depending upon the criticality of the project, complexity of the work involved, complexity of the engagement and all. We might consider reviewing bi-weekly, weekly, or bi-monthly, depending upon the policies adopted for the given project organization. Now project organization also will come to our discussions quite a few times. Project organizations means the project team plus who all are basically helping these teams, means the associated SMEs, experts, associated reviewers, auditors, and associated PMO for guiding that project team. And this is why we normally call it as a project organization. So any and all persons included in the project organizations are normally referred for certain tasks like management guidance, like overall reviews and audit, and so on and so forth. The project documents we normally consider as an additional documents to any management plans are assumption logs. Whatever we assume for a given project, it can be as simple as let's assume last year there was a snowstorm. This year there won't be a snowstorm. Again, every such assumption give rise to a risk, and we might add that risk in our risk register. Risk register is just a list of risk with the weightages, score, cost, and the resources allocated to that risk, and so on and so forth. So that's how we have assumption log, risk register, and a risk report, where we have reviewed this risk mostly weekly or a sprint-wise basis, depending upon the policy and processes adopted by that project organization. And that's why we use risk report as an output of that risk review meeting. Then we have cost forecast. We try to build this cost forecast in terms of how we are going right now, what type of cost we are looking for. Let's say if the project is at the client is going to pay at $10 million for this 6-month project, then we have around $8 million as our overall amount after management reserve. Then we have phase reserve, then we have activity reserve or work item reserve. So there are normally 3 reserves we are talking about which gets applied. So whenever you start working on a project, these reserves helps you out to absorb the shock in case your what can say work get extended in case some natural climate strikes, and you can absorb those shocks in terms of delays, in terms of inefficiencies, in terms of reworks via these management reserve. That's why we build this framework called management reserve. There is management reserve, there's a cost reserve, and there's a work item or activity reserve. These three reserves are followed almost in all project organizations. Then we have issue logs. Any issue popping up in terms of whatever we see as a risk getting materialized. As we see the risk of snowstorm hitting your area. It's a simple risk to be precise. But whenever such snowstorm affects, there are persons who are traveling from longer roads who couldn't reach office. There are persons who at all couldn't reach office depending upon the severity of these snow in their region and so on and so forth. So we need to consider these added inefficiencies in our project executions, and that's why this we normally assign a cost to that risk. We're going to understand how we build this risk register, how we address cost within risk knowledge management area, and we work with the templatization. We work with a couple of hands-on workshop for such risk reviews, risk audit, and risk reports as well. Okay, then comes the lessons learned. So this is the knowledge archival system which we discussed in our last sessions, where we archive anything which are doing better than others, anything which have done earlier, either best practices or best executed project kind of way. We refer to those documents to make sure we are improving our efficiency day by day. We are improving our project practices day by day progressively. And then we have milestone list. Milestone list is basically a list of targets to be achieved with a given schedule. So let's say you're going to release your such and such delivery on 1st of April, or vice versa. I'm just taking an example here. So in a 1st of April you need to achieve this delivery. So before that you need to make sure you have these things developed, you have this thing tested, you have this thing packaged, build with something called release note, and then release it to the client. Normally these releases do happen on internet, so cloud based for all softwares. But when it comes to normal deliveries, like number of cars to be delivered in a given a number of cars to be delivered in a given week or even a given day, we need to proactively start the testing. We might have a random testing, we might have each and every car tested by the testing team. Again, depending upon the policy and processes you achieved, you normally have these milestones clamped to a schedule where we have to proactively check it out on almost a day by day, where we'll make sure all these milestones which are targeted will be achieved. And that's what the kind of target the project manager works with. And that's how the milestone list is one of the most important list. Now it's included in your project management plan. So when you talk about project management plan, we talk about Microsoft Project Plan, Jira, Primavera, or all such project management tools, whatever the organizations have adopted to build these plans on. And then we have quality reports. So what type of templatization, standardization we have applied? Are we working with Agile Scrum? Are we working with waterfall? Are we using the particular templates which might be enhanced, which might be built for a particular type of project? Might be healthcare project, might be university project, might be automotive project, and so on and so forth. So this way we normally choose which type of templatization we should use from our library of templates in our organization's kitty. Then we talked about risk register, risk report, schedule forecast. Like the cost forecast, we do build a schedule forecast. So if you keep moving on the similar lines, if you keep progressing or building deliveries on a similar task line, then how long it will take to complete the project. So this is a kind of trend analysis we are talking about. How we are doing, how much work is getting done in a day, in an hour, and so on and so forth. Now all these project management software give you all these details, and we are going to do a hands-on workshop on these as well. Plus work performance information, how resources are performing. Are we doing good? Are we doing okay? We should be increasing our efficiency from our last project executions. And that's why we normally try to track this work efficiency on a day by day level. And mostly there are various way of estimation and the actual executed work, where we try to compare these two to get an actual result in terms of how good we are doing. If we are nearing to okay, that's not very great. We should achieve a better efficiency for a current project than the previous executions. And that's the overall thought process in terms of work performance information. Then we talk about agreements. Any agreements which are kind of punitive agreement or a penalty clauses, as we normally call about, we need to very careful in terms of applying those milestone lists proactively. So if somebody wants to have a delivery in 5th April, I need to make sure the developments get completed before a few days so that the corresponding testing quality control processes also get executed. And then only we can work on the rework if there are any, and then deliver it to the client. This way the overall processes happens in the software industry. Similarly, in terms of car manufacture, in terms of any product project solution support services type of project, we normally proactively check, are we going to are we ready to deliver all these deliveries as per the milestones, as per the penalty clauses, as per the punitive agreements we've worked on with this client. And that's why it's important to understand what type of agreements we have created. Are there any so many penalty clauses, or there are few? Normally there are few in today's modern world, but these things keep increasing in terms of client want to understand, if you're not delivering on time, you might get bit penalized in terms of monetary benefits reduction kind of scenario. And that's how even the budget figures might get skewed. That's why we need to consider agreement as our overall disciplined path to execute or to achieve these milestones progressively. Then we have enterprise environmental factor. Any and all factors getting affected, your project is getting affected from any type of external circumstances, events, scenarios external to your organizations are normally referred in enterprise environmental factor, like the snowstorm. Then we have organizational process assets, where the organizations helps the project organizations to make sure you are on track, doing everything effectively, efficiently, in a progressive manner. So these are all inputs to monitor and control project work, where we are trying to manage the project execution very, perfectly scientific nature, where we have number of documents, name of documents mentioned here. There could be a difference in name of documents, but overall, this is the standard best practices applied to most of the companies in North America or Canada. The tools and techniques, we always get help by all these experts, where the center of excellence or subject matter experts helps us out in case we got stuck somewhere, in case we need some detailing of any information or a review or a help in types of particulars of domains or something like that. Then we do have various data analysis processes included in the project management, where we have something called alternative analysis. Whatever path you chosen, let's say you're thinking of implementing iris scanner in couple of enhancing attendance management system type of implementation. In couple of places you might go ahead with the biometric instrument. Now these two have very good difference in terms of their cost, in terms of their implementation ways and means. The biometric is at around $40 to $100. When it comes to iris scanners, it normally starts with $250 per instrument. And that's why wherever you implement these things, we need to make sure all these alternatives have been weighed in terms of the efforts required, in terms of the cost required, and so on and so forth. That's why alternative analysis is one of the most common analysis we use during our meeting. This can be addressed during our business analyst meeting, or if not, then we might if we have better alternatives when it comes to execution of project, we might have this alternative analysis included in our daily scrum meet or a project review meet as well. Same thing goes with the cost benefit analysis. The benefits to be achieved by spending so much cost. This is also called as a return on investment type of analysis as well, where you are justifying how much cost we are spending for a given um, benefits to be achieved. Let's say you want to have a bigger car engine, but bigger car engine costs more, and bigger car engine consumes more gas per mile. And that's why we need to make sure, is the consumer who is going to purchase this car, is he or she ready with such extra expenditure or not. And so we basically create a decision which is optimum for our project, optimum for our consumers also. Then there's earn value analysis. We're going to start earn value analysis in project cost management knowledge area, where we'll calculate how these deliveries, whatever we achieved, we normally measure in terms of the revenue earned, and so on and so forth. Then we have a root cause analysis. This is a quite common analysis we might have done earlier in our work in our IT company as well, where we try to go to a root cause if there's any challenge, any issues, so that the repetition of issues or challenges will be minimum. And that's why root cause analysis have a specific process or procedure adopted by given project organizations from the templatization as well. Then we have a trend analysis. Even cost benefit analysis or earn value analysis can be referred as a trend analysis, but there could be another trends analyzed also in terms of resources attendance, resources work efficiency, in terms of raw materials quality, the work deliver quality, the rework quality, and all such trends do affect our project progress. So we normally keep track of such trend analysis uh, via some sort of a matrices. We normally refer these tracking mechanism as a matrix tracking mechanism for a given organizations, and this will be normally displayed on the dashboard as well. So that's why trend analysis is kind of a group name given to various trends we analyze on day-to-day basis. Then variance analysis. Variance analysis basically analysis of whatever we planned and whatever we achieved, or whatever we are achieving, the difference between that. If we are quite far, then yes, we have a red flag. The project should be marked as a yellow or a red in case of how much variance is there. In terms of variance specifically, the cost consumptions, wherever, if we keep doing such expenditure for each or every project, and the expenditure can be in terms of number of man hours consumed, number of days consumed, or number of milestone deferred, and so on and so forth as well. So any such variance has to be monitored very carefully, so that our project, we showcases our project is on track every time, all the time, and that's how we can achieve the project excellence. And that's the overall aim of the project management. That's why we normally have a great measures in terms of trend analysis and variance analysis as well. All these analyses are normally calculated automatically by your project management software. If not, then only we normally have some formulas or some special program to calculate these things on a daily basis or a weekly basis, as per the policy and procedure adopted by your organization. Again, similarly to the alternative analysis, we have a decision making process. Whatever decisions you make in terms of alternative available, we have to create those artifacts. We need to make sure wherever there's a review or audit, we should be able to produce those artifacts in terms of documents, Excel sheet, or any meeting minutes of meetings or recordings of the meeting to be produced before these auditory or review bodies, to make sure whatever decision you have taken is not taken mostly single-handedly. It should be a teamwork. This is all team efforts we are talking about when it comes to project management. Then comes the meetings, in terms of how a project manager arranges the meeting, plans the meeting proactively with the agenda, with the timelines, even the maximum time to be achieved by this meeting, and so on and so forth. It basically denotes the efficiency of a manager in terms of how he's managing the hours of the teams effectively. And these are all tools and techniques in terms of monitor and control project work. In terms of outputs, There are work performance report and the updates to it. If a person was doing fine previously, but now his performance has been reduced or might be having some challenges, so we might have to go meet, discuss certain things, or have a kind of video call. What are the issues? Is there any personal issues? How we could address these issues, and so on and so forth. So these type of work performance challenges has to be eradicated as early as we can, and that's why this makes the complete project on track every time, effectively execution, if you have all these resources working at their optimum efficiencies. And all these efficiencies are calculated automatically in a project management software. In terms of change requests, these are detrimental to overall whatever planning you have achieved. So in a given sprint, let's say you have a week sprint. In a week there are 5 working days, and if you have 10 resources working with you, and if there are, let's say, 5 change requests with, let's say, 2 hour each, the overall weightage increased or the load increase on the workforce is quite large. So what we do normally as a project manager, we try to put these change requests to the next sprint, so that we can adjust and plan it much better, much effectively, and even we can get the client sanction as well. There are specific committee called steering committee or change control board committee, which normally helps project manager to make sure whatever you are inclusion in terms of change requests have to be weighed, have to be analyzed before, so that how many resources, how many hours are required for the change request. If it's very minor, we might get the cost might get borne by the project organization. But in case for a larger request, we might go to client and saying we might go back to the client and say, hey boss, this change request is too big, and say you might need to pay for such thing extra. By the time this process happens, then only we normally include this change request in our project. We're going to consider all these scenarios in depth whenever we analyze, whenever we learn cost knowledge management. Then project management plan update. Any plan wherever we change in terms of using flexible timing, not using flexible timing, using particular templates, not using particular template, and those reasons for that has to be updated in all these project management plans. So that's why project management plan, any component. Then project document updates. We do update cost forecast. If you keep executing the project as per the current pace, what type of cost we are looking for, what type of schedule we are looking for, any changes thereof to be noted, to be updated respectively in your project management software. Then there are issue logs. Any additional issues, any risk getting materialized to be analyzed on almost daily basis by the project manager and few team members. We don't normally involve everybody from the team in day-to-day risk reviews. Then we have lessons learned. If you are doing anything better than the previous project organizations, you should notify to the company, and then the organizations also evolves steadily in terms of your project management practices. That's what this lessons learned register or a knowledge management processes helps us out in day-to-day basis. Does anybody have any questions in monitoring and controlling project work?
I have a question, Pandeji.
Please go ahead, sir.
Now, the lessons learned register and risk register, aren't they both connected? In other words, don't they factor the lessons learned in similar previous projects? Or
yes, the answer to the question is yes, but there's a distinctness in between them. When it comes to lessons learned, we are concentrating on more of what we did to make it efficient. When it comes to risk, we normally concentrated on any issue getting materialized. Let's say snowstorm coming in your way, and which might be paralyzing your region for 2 days. This is a kind of risk getting materialized. But whatever you plan or whatever the previous project manager have planned to address such scenario could be used to mitigate that risk, to absorb the shock of such risk getting materialized, we can refer to the lessons learned register. So there's a distinct difference between those two. Does that
Got
address
you.
your
Got
query, sir?
you. Good. Good. Thank you.
Most welcome, no problem. Anybody else have any questions, queries? Okay, let me move on. Perform integrated change control board. Now this is basically when it comes to this is falls under monitoring and controlling process group, where we continuously monitor and do enhance our project organizations to make sure we adopt to the policies and processes continuously. So this is what we call continuous integration as well, or continuous improvement, continuous evolution as well. Okay, now let's try to understand from input, tools and techniques and output perspectives. So we are talking about project management plan, specifically change management plan. Anything you change in terms of either approaches or basically any policies or temporarization change, whatever you adopted, being approved by the management, and you have started adopting these things, all such things are updated in the change management plan. In terms of configuration management plan, configuration management normally talks about the infrastructure services. So in today's modern world, talk about the cloud services. So you might have changed the cloud service provider. So you might have to understand what type of efficiency are we looking for, how much storage space do we need, how much data bandwidth we are looking for, and so on and so forth. So these, anything in configuration management, even a server at your local desk, the laptops changes, or any computer changes has to be addressed in this configuration management plan. Then we have a scope baseline. Scope baselines talk about how many work item or activities we are completing in a given day, or in a given hours, or per hour how many activities we are completing, and so on and so forth. Now this is basically talks about more of efficiencies, how we are achieving the completeness of a given module, given phase, and something like that. And then we have a schedule baseline. Again, schedule baseline talks about what type of milestones are being addressed. Are we going fine with the plans we have prepared earlier, or any differences on between those plans? Are we debating in terms of we are lacking in terms of efficiencies? Are we doing what you can say, are we marching ahead in terms of showing better efficiency than the previous projects? That should be the case. But still, again, we do create this schedule baseline. Then the cost baseline, same. How are we spending in terms of our project execution? Do we have too many resources? Normally the cost baseline is not a flat figure. If you have ever look at the graph of how the cost spendings do happens in a given project, it's a kind of inverted parabola in the sense, you normally start at a certain cost. Let's say given to a $8 million project, as we were discussing earlier, we normally start at spending of 1 or 1.5 million to acquire the assets for the project. And these assets can be anything like man, material, machine. Well, resource, we don't process the pay cycle early. We normally pay after the resources have completed their work. In terms of material and machines, we normally procure raw material on credit. So we give a fraction of amount of to the actual cost of that raw material. Then machines, well, machines you need to procure proactively, and that's why there's a maximum asset investment whenever you start the project. We're going to study these detail in terms of our cost management hands-on workshop as well. So please don't worry. But these cost baselines, or how much you should spend in terms of the days gone by, the sprints we've already achieved, consumed, that's what the cost baseline talk about. Are we in line with those? Are we in line with whatever planned costs were, or are we exceeding those costs, and so on and so forth? Okay. Yes, Shruti ma'am, thanks to point that thing out. Shruti ma'am asked a question, what about the technological change? If the requirement of functionality is added between the project, where and when it is changed in this side. Normally, yes, these things do happen. But as you can understand, if clients want an advanced technology, advanced instrument, you can consider it in terms of biometric versus iris scanners, right? The cost has been increased threefold. So who's going to address that cost? These cost has to be borne by the client only, because client is what you can say, asking for it, right? And that's all. But again, depending upon your engagement, depending upon the relations with the client, you might procure the asset proactively and then bill the client, then invoice the client. Again, these all things depend on how you have decided, how the contracts and agreement have been drafted, in terms of how the project progress will happen. And that's how these baselines are really important, and these normally give you a clear idea if we are deviating from the original plan. And then you might go to, you might ask for help, be it something like expert, be it something like additional resources from a resource manager, be it something like better raw material, and so on and so forth. The project documents are normally taken as an inputs are basis of estimate. So what type of estimates are we looking for? Normally there are 5-6 estimation processes we normally use, how much work to be done in a given hour, and these basis of estimates is like some resources commit to you, in terms of commit to project manager, I can get this thing done in so many hours, and I normally allocate the work to him or her so that he can do it with a complete devotion, with a complete maximum efficiency. And all such basis of estimates are normally standardized in the start of a project, where you might go with something like line of code, bottom of estimation, you might go with function point estimation, and so on and so forth. We're going to understand this estimate in our project schedule acknowledgement area, where we choose one over the others, and what are the advantages and disadvantages which are used in the new model world. That's also we're going to discuss there. Again, the RTM, we have discussed about RTM. Just to give you, requirement traceability matrix is a table where we normally trace the requirement from start to the end. And that's how we normally take RTM as an input here, to make sure whatever requirements we are considering for the progress in terms of how we are doing the integration, day by day, sprint by sprint, phase by phase, it has to be tracked down with these RTMs as well. Then the risk report. Again, whenever you do a risk audit, you normally publish a risk report in terms of what type of risks are getting materialized, what type of cost we are looking for in terms of materialization of such risk progressively. Then again, we have work performance report to make sure we are fine in terms of efficiencies, we are achieving the efficiency which we should achieve, and so on and so forth. Again, the change requests are inputs here in terms of understanding if there are any changes, how we are addressing them, what type of change requests in terms of cost, in terms of change logs are being applied on a given project schedule also. And then also we have EEFs and OPAs to help us out to execute our project in the best possible practical manner. The tools and techniques here are, of course, we get help from experts in all project planning, in all such adjustment to the planning as well. Then we have a change control tools. Here we are talking about how these change control board is doing what type of what type of estimation, what type of resource arrangement, what type of project help. The change control board are ready to help us out in terms of whenever you assign a change to a given given project, there are always extra efforts, extra resources need. If the change is too much, then we might wait for the new resources to join you, and this is different from whatever sprint length or breadth you are planning right now. These are all addition to whatever you planned, right? You understand the change and issues. Change is basically any addition, enhancement, or change from the previous work. The issue means there are some obstructions, there are some problems in achieving the maximum efficiency, and this is how we progressively attain these things. Then we have data analysis, alternative analysis, how we can choose the best alternative, how we can apply the best alternative in terms of cost, in terms of efficiencies, and so on and so forth. Again, the cost benefit analysis we are talking about. The cost benefits, are we applying the most economical alternatives like the biometric versus ID scanners and so on and so forth. Again, these analysis create some artifacts which are presented in terms of whenever there's a review and audit, like we have decided with the team with the help of SMEs or experts as well. Then the decision making process. In many meetings we need to decide, in terms of, and in all these in many of such meetings even client is also party to vote. So we do vote which is more beneficial for a client for a given processes, and we might go with that. And there is something called autocratic decision making also. Sometimes project manager have to put the foot down, because normally project manager is the senior most person, right? And that's why we need to make some decisions by ourselves, and these are normally referred as an autocratic decision. But we should actually mention all such decision, why we have done such, and why we have taken as an autocratic decision. It might be the timeline, it might be the scenario where these things better than others, and that's how you normally take the autocratic decision. These are far and few instances, but still if you take any autocratic decision, we need to make sure we create a relevant artifact by ourselves and saying this is how and this is why I have decided. And then we have multi-criteria decision analysis. In some cases we might have a more number of alternatives to be considered, and this is a kind of bit lengthy process at that time. And that time we might consider voting, that time we might consider weighing the options in terms of cost, in terms of efficiency, in terms of spending and all those things. And of course we plan meeting for any data analysis or decision making processes as well. The outputs are basically the approved change requests. So whatever change requests are approved by the change control board are normally consumed in the plan. Might be the current sprint or the next sprint, current phase or the next phase as well. Depending upon the decision we have accepted, we normally go ahead with the plan and the relevant changes in the plan. Any changes in such a project management plan can be updated in the relevant project management document. And then project document update the change log, and this change log talks about accepted changes, approved changes and accepted by the project manager. These two are different processes. Please pay your attention here. When it comes to change log, it considers all the changes which have been reported by client, but when they are approved, they get mentioned as approved with a timestamp. And when they are accepted by the project manager, then they are called accepted changes. So there are three status to each and every change: mentioned or noted, reviewed, sanctioned, approved, and then accepted in the project plan. In the plan acceptance, we might allocate a schedule to it in terms of project manager. The last stage is totally project manager responsibility when it comes to accepted change. When it comes to approved or sanctioned change, it can be done by the client, it can be done by the change control board, or some nominated person for working as a change control board. And this is all how we continuously keep performing the integrated change and control board in a step-by-step manner throughout our project. Does anybody have any question on change control board, performing integrated change control? Am I audible? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
So there's no question. Let me go ahead. Okay. Then close project. This is a final stage in terms of whenever we have done or we have served the purpose of a project organization, we might close the project for moving ahead or starting up a new project as well. So here the learnings are most important thing. So even if the project is failure, we do learn from those execution, we learn from those workings, right? So here the close or phase, close project or close phase is one of the most important terminology we use in terms of addressing the experience or the lessons learned, knowledge archival from this execution as well. So when it comes to inputs, the inputs are project charter, where you normally refer what were the objectives, how all objectives are being achieved, and so on and so forth. Then we have project management plan. All the project management plan has to be closed, has to be brought down to a conclusive level in case of failure or a success. Now this normal execution is totally in what you can say, we need to refer in terms of either it's a successful project or a failure project. We normally don't call it failure project. We normally refer it as a learning experience or a knowledge gaining executions. Of course, there's a cost attached to it. Of course, there are effort spending attached to it, and so on and so forth. Then the project documents are normally taken as an input in closed project or a phase are assumption log. What all things we've assumed, are they relevant to the executions? What type of estimates we have considered, are they effective in tracking the actual efficiency, and so on and so forth. What type of change log, how many changes we have accepted, how many changes were mentioned, are there too many? So there's a fault of requirement gathering here. If the changes are too many, the business analyst team have not worked well, and this is a kind of normal thought process, right? But again, that's a kind of experience we are talking about. So we might update these things in terms of, we might choose some better analyst, better team to understand how we can do the requirement analysis better day by day. Same thing go with the lessons learned register. Even collecting the lessons, collecting the knowledge in a way where we are noting down how to collect this knowledge. See, some of the organizations have really improved their techniques over the time, but few of the organizations, they're still struggling. What is the best way to gain knowledge? Think of it as you're trying to understand what I've learned from the yesterday, right? And this is whenever you do something like to-do list, you know a clear idea of what are you mentioned in terms of how these learnings to be collected. Should it be notified under experience? Should be notified under a specific different category? Now again, depending on these policies and processes adopted by the organizations, we normally follow the knowledge archival system. But again, some organizations might need a revamping these thought processes quite urgently. And these things do happen in a real practical life. That's what, as a project manager, we need to understand. Now there are specified subject matter experts how to archive knowledge, or what type of knowledge headings or contents we need to archive in this lesson register. And then we are evolving in terms of on the search criteria, on how we retrieve such information also. So depending upon the efficiency of retrieval and archival, all these lessons learned register has to be understood in terms of, are we doing it good? Means, are we fine with the efficiency of retrieval and archival mechanism in terms of knowledges? If not, how could we adopt the better way? How could we adopt the better policies and processes? The milestone list as an input to validate what all milestones are achieved. Are we was according to the plan? If there is a deviation from the plan, what type of deviations was approved, what type of reserves were used, reserve mostly in terms of efforts, in terms of additional resources, and so on and so forth. Then we have project communications. We're going to learn project communication in project communication management area extensively, where we try to understand how to communicate better day by day. And even we can use modern communication processes, where this project communication has to done through, let's say, Zoom, Google Meet nowadays. Previously we used to have phone calls, WhatsApp messages, emails, and so on and so forth. So the communication is also getting improved day by day. So what type of tools have we used in terms of communications? Could we improve them? The quality control measurement in terms of how many reworks we've done, how many rework hours we have consumed, and that's a kind of additional what we required for this project, right? And there are some percentage benchmark in terms of the work versus rework kind of scenarios in quite a good number of organizations. And we have to make sure we are within those marks. If we are exceeding those marks, then we have not executed our project effectively, efficiently. And there are other quality reports as well, like how many cars we have started manufacturing, let's say 60, and as a result we might have 58 cars delivered to the market. Now these two cars, which are a kind of failure of our project, right, failure of our development or creation work. Now how to reduce them? So this is what we normally call as a lean management, cost control mechanisms. All these are considered whenever you close project or close phase. Then of course we have requirement documentation. What type of requirements were have been conveyed to the project management team? Are they really good? Are there any changes in requirement? So you might look at the RTMs. Then of course the risk register and risk reports, where what all risk have been mentioned in the risk register in totality, what all number of risks are materialized, how the cost attachment to the risk is analyzed in terms of what was the original cost of risk, how the risk was mitigated in terms of number of hours spent, number of instrument we might need to apply to to address this risk, and so on and so forth. Then we have accepted deliverables. So how many deliveries were made, how many deliveries were accepted, how many deliveries were rejected, if any, how many deliveries have some rework. All this analysis gives you a clear idea in terms of project efficiencies. The closed project or phase is included in the umbrella project management area called project integration management. That's why it addresses the complete project on a whole. And that's how we normally learn from our closure how the project was executed in terms of requirements, in terms of business case, how was the problem statement, and how was the solution statement and their relevance to it. How was the benefit management plan? What type of return on investment we got? What type of agreements were made? Are there any agreements added, any contracts added whenever we start execution project or within that execution of a project? Normally all these agreements, SLAs, even punitive contractual terminology should be added at the start of the project. If they are added in between, it means that there's a kind of communication gap, there's a kind of challenge of maturity of documentation, and that's a kind of red mark on your project. Then a procurement documentation. What type of procurements have we addressed? Are they in time? Sometimes there are a procurement delays and the project tasks get delayed as well. We have to have, as a project manager, sufficient time lead in between procurement and delivery. But some of the procurement are perishable procurement, like they go bad in couple of days, couple of hours, couple of weeks. Again, depending upon this perishability of a given procurement, we need to understand how these procurements were planned, why the procurements were delayed, is there any challenges in terms of putting up the request, if there's any challenge in terms of vendor delivering the entities, and so on and so forth. So all these things are analyzed. Even the organizational process assets, whatever template chosen for, let's say, project planning, for estimations, for any particular documentations, are they were sufficient, or they are excess in nature, or they are too few in the normal practices. And these things do happen whenever you move to Agile. They normally try to guide you in document reductions. We do have a certain benchmark in terms of these documents are necessary, and we have to have these documents. You need to spend efforts in building those documents. But sometimes under the pretext of addressing agility, we might ignore such things, and that's why there are challenges in terms of building even artifact, building a particular concrete proof for execution of such thought processes. That's why we need to understand what type of organizational processes have been included in your progressive manner. Then we have tools and techniques. In tools and techniques, we of course take help from SOEs, SMEs or COEs to make sure whatever knowledge we are archived, whatever knowledge we are gathering is sufficient or is the best way to explain our project execution to the other team members as well. And that's why we normally have a repetitive review in all these knowledge gathering policies and processes as well. Even the data analysis in terms of document analysis, wherever how many documents have been made, are they relevant, are they enough to express the knowledge archived, are they really enough to refer to the project, product, solution, support, services execution in a progressive manner. Then we might do regression analysis, trend analysis, and variance analysis, similar type of analysis to understand what type of execution were that. Is it really great? Some execution might be best in terms of cost category, but in terms of resource management, we might have so many iteration. In some project might be best in terms of resources. No resources have left the organizations, we still having that team intact and we can execute the project again, but they might have delayed the whole thing, so schedule variance might be a possibility. Again, we need to understand this on a holistic level and then basically try to make sure the project execution was according to our evolutionary parameter of efficiencies. And we normally have such review meetings. We plan such review meeting whenever we build our project plan as well. And we might have some extra meeting just to make sure whenever you're closing project. So there are specific number of meetings normally planned to make sure you close all these project management plan and the learnings from that project, in terms of let the other project team members follow you or copy you or take inspiration from you to do their project in the best possible way. The outputs are of course the lessons learned register and the actual final product, service, or a result which can be transitioned to the client. And a final report, this might called as a project closure report as well, or a phase closure report, or a sprint closure report as well. Now there are a good number of organizations who are starting a kind of sprint closure as well. But again, these are also far and few. Depending upon your organizations, we might address that as well. So if your organization is doing a sprint closure, what type of data points they are considering in terms of different matrices tracking? Are they considering earn value management? Are they considering cost benefit analysis, or so on and so forth? And then of course we might update some organizational process asset, we might update some templatization or a standardization workflow of an audit or a risk audit, depending upon your learning, depending upon the way you executed your project as a project manager. You are the leader, you are the in-chair person who is doing this thing in terms of from start to end. That's why project manager is one of the most crucial factor, one of the most responsible person for executing any project. Is the most critical resources. And this also kind of advantages for us, because normally whoever in terms of cost cutting, let it go the resources, project manager is the last resource to be let it go or to be kicked off, to be terminated in terms of cost saving. Normally the developers or the individual contributors are normally let it go first, something like business analyst. But project manager have critical knowledge in terms of business, in terms of revenues, in terms of risk, and the whole environments altogether, including the quality policy and processes. That's why project manager is one of the most crucial persons to be attached with these teams to let it go for a given organizations. Okay, any questions so far? Anybody have any questions? We are good, right? No problem. So let me move ahead. Now there's a second knowledge area called project scope management, and there are 6 entities here, 6 processes we need to learn here in terms of plan scope management. This is an umbrella activity within scope. Collect requirements. Now here the collect requirement name doesn't sound very right, but we can consider it as a validate requirement, because normally requirements are collected by the business analyst team and then define scope. Here, we normally define the core objectives and subsidiary objectives. We build a kind of hierarchy of requirement also. And then we have create WBS, work breakdown structure or activity breakdown structure. Um, and these structures are basically planned for specific estimations and the actual efficient project plan, inclusions. So you normally use these WBS to create your project plan as well. Then in monitoring and controlling process group, this is a kind of continuous activity like a review. You do validate scope almost on a daily basis in your daily scrum call or in your daily stand-up meeting. And then you keep controlling scope as well. So these are all things we are going to learn in project scope management. Okay, let's just review quickly whatever we learned in terms of our first project management knowledge area called project integration management. There were 7 processes in all 5 process groups. So first we understood develop project charter, then project management plan, a kind of umbrella project management plans. Then in executing process group, direct and manage project work. This is the actual execution or creation we do, and manage project knowledge where we collect the knowledge, collect the learning. Then in monitoring and controlling group, this is the actual management of the project. So monitoring and control project work on day in, day out, on hourly basis, and then perform integrated change control board. Whatever you develop, you integrate those things and deliver it to the client. And closing process group where we have close project or phase. We collect the knowledge. We try to understand how we did in terms of the projects in comparison with the other projects in your organizations. And then we move to the next knowledge area called project scope management. So here we are concentrating predominantly on the scope. The scope includes processes required to ensure the project includes all the work required and only work required to complete the project successfully. As we've discussed in our integration management knowledge area understanding, normally all the best management school, they stick to develop whatever required or whatever committed. And this is what they mean by whatever work required and only work required. No value additions, no additional deliveries or freebies to the client, because every freebie have some efforts attached to it, have some cost attached to it. Now whenever you're giving some of these freebies, you are straining your cost structures, you are straining your cost benefits, and that's why it's dangerous to step onto those to these figures. That's why the project should include all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. Can anybody tell me what do you mean by scope? Just a kind of layman's questions. You don't have to answer it technically. What do you mean by scope? Anybody?
Opportunity.
Uh,
Scope means it's the whole horizon.
right. Yeah, whole horizon might be a good answer. This is not an opportunity. Here we are talking about what needs to be done. Right? Please, sir, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I mean, in my opinion, project scope is like the whole initiative, initial vision, like what exactly we are going to do, the understanding all the requirements and the definitions and the needs of the client, and how we're gonna complete the whole circle around the the boundary of the project.
Right.
Like what exactly we are doing, and focusing on the exactly the needful stuff we need to do.
Sure. That's very correct. And here we, if you can remember the box in the use case diagram, that's what the scope we are talking about. The boundary line of what needs to be done, the total requirements which are approved and sanctioned for a given work. Not like if you are developing an attendance management system, the leave management system come by default. No, if it's not approved by the client, then you might have to consider it as another project or an addition to your project. And that's fine, because all these additions are normally have some separate cost attached to them. And these sort of additions are can be understood. But when it comes to giving freebies to a given project, to a given solution making, is a challenge, is a strain on your cost you already allocated to a project. Does that make sense? Could you get an idea what you mean by scope here?
Right.
Thank you. So let's go with the first, or let's have a deliverables. Okay, good, no problem. Deliverables, requirements, and boundaries of a project. Rightly said, Shruti ma'am. Great. And now let's try to understand what are these, different processes are included in the project scope management knowledge area. Plan scope management, the process of creating a scope and management plan that documents how the project and product scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. Again, here we are talking about the total management aspects of whatever scope has been assigned. So we might, create limitations. We might create the total length and breadth of a project to be developed. It can be for a project, solution, support services. Collect requirement. This is basically determining, documenting, and managing the stakeholder needs and requirements to meet the project objective. If you can understand, this is more of a validation of a scope than collect requirement. So validating the requirement, whatever collected by the business analyst team, that's how we have to read these in terms of a current modern, implementation of collect requirement. Then defining a scope. Here we are defining what needs to be done by disintegrating these, work, task, or activities. And here we will understand to the nth level what all included, what all excluded, and so on and so forth. So this way we revalidate the scope in terms of what has to be, actually done. In Create WBS, this is a process of subdividing the project deliverables, the project work, project activities into a smaller and more manageable component. And we're going to do a hands-on workshop on creating WBS also. Here, this is the base of your project plan. So whatever you disintegrate the work, whatever you disintegrate the activity, or the overall, work activities, and any unit of work, whatever you're planning to get, consider, we normally disintegrate to a level where it can be easily, manageable, easily estimatable in terms of, let's say, we want to fit those, 6 biometrics at a, State Farm office in St. Louis. So Ravindra is leading this, small part of a project, or you can call it as a module as well. And Ravindra is going to St. Louis with 6-7, biometric, and there has to be, we have to install around biometrics on the 6th door. Now, how do you disintegrate this work? The work might include travel from one place to another place. Work might include procure the entities before starting travel. Work might include a different number of resources, man, material, machine. Even within man, we might have a person who is going to fit these biometric, on the wall. Another person might do the wiring, electrical supply, network wiring. Another person might be a software expert who will install the software required to take the data from the biometric and upload it to the cloud server. Another person might configure the cloud server to keep receiving these data at a real time, and so on and so forth. So all this disintegration of a work happens in a Create WBS, where the last entity should be executed within a few number of hours. Normally, the biggest task we can plan is 6 hours per day. And we're going to understand this thumb rule also, how this thumb rule were created in Create WBS type of, process group. Then validate scope. Here it's an ongoing activity. It's in the monitoring and controlling process group. So we keep validating the scope. So if some additions in terms of change request, in terms of issue log have been assigned to our project team, we have to validate that thing. Is it included in the scope? Can it be included in the scope? Or we are basically extrapolating ourselves. So like that, we need to validate each and every entity before we include it in a plan. And there's a change control board, SME and COE to help us out. And then we have a control scope. This is the one of the most important thing which project manager had to control in terms of controlling the scope. We couldn't include all these change log, all these different activities, work item assigned to us just just because client have thought that. No, we need to validate that. We need to understand, is it really justifiable? Means client want to do their parking management even if you are doing the attendance management, and these are the normal expectation. Client wants the world, and that's the normal scenario. Nothing wrong in that. But we as a project manager have to diplomatically justify this couldn't be inclusion. This can be another project. And if you can start another project with the same client, you can be normally get promoted to a program manager level. And this is how the progression of your appraisal system or progression of your career do happens in terms of project managers, because we are leader now. We have to lead ourselves first and then the team. And that's how you need to even understand your career aspirations in terms of how this project management knowledge area is going to help you out in progression of your career as well. And control scope is one of the most crucial entity we do in terms of managing project progressively. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on these 6 process groups in project scope management knowledge area?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead, sir.
So I have 2 questions. Number one is like when you were discussing about creating a WBS, right? So in the end, you said the last step should be under 6 hours.
Right.
So if we are working in different industry like SDLC, so does it really matter like we have to follow the same hours requirement, because it can be anything, right? In depending on the project type. If we are working in SDLC, so it might be possible like we have to extend the hours availability according to the needs, or we should have to like follow the same bracket.
No, okay. This is a thumb rule which we are talking about in a generic sense. So even if you're working for NASA, even if you're working for US military, or you're working for something like Cognizant Wipro or something like that, still the thumb rule or standardization remains the same. Does it mean that you need to follow that? No, sometimes you might create an exception. Let's say you are driving down from New York to St. Louis. It's around some 600 miles, which couldn't be completed in 6 hours. So tasks like that might require some exceptions in terms of this is a physical activity which normally consumes more hours than whatever we have planned. And while planning, you need to validate those things. You might broke down the path from New York to Washington, Washington to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to St. Louis. Again, you might choose different path and different tasks you can create in a task list. These tasks or decomposition depend on how effectively you have to control the project, how effectively you need to make sure in terms of measuring this task progress at a given number of hours basis. The 6-hour benchmark is because according to the PMI or the Best Management Institute, the work plan for a day is for 6 hours. The rest of the 2 hours for meeting, lunch, and whatnot activities you normally have in a given organization. So 6 productive hours are normally planned, and that's why that 6 hours benchmark. Okay, and we'll basically discuss this in depth in whenever we do the create WBS hands-on workshop as well.
Totally
Okay.
understandable. And the second question I had, like when you were discussing about like controlling scope, and give an example, like the client wants to manage the parking as well. So we can diplomatically, say like we will do it in a different project and all. So at that time, you said like when we are having another project from the client, so we will be consider ourselves to a program manager, right?
Right.
If you're handling 2 projects, that means you are a program manager, right?
That's right. That's a normal career.
Yeah. Earlier days, like you were discussing about the position like senior project manager. As a senior project manager, you also control several like 2 small projects as well. So is it the same thing like program manager and the senior project manager?
Yes, sir.
Because
They are
both
the same.
are handling the more than 1 project.
That's right, sir.
Okay.
And again, the increase in salary demand has to be, diplomatically put to the senior management as well. And we'll talk about that in our communication management as well.
Yeah, I was just like clearing my thoughts like between the difference between the senior project manager and the program manager. That's it. Not I'm not
No,
like worried about the
again,
compensation and all.
no, basically this is a part of every organizations, and they do differ in terms of how they want to do this, right? There are grades in program manager. So the third grade is basically with just 2 projects. The second grade can be with 5+ project. The third program manager can be with a 10+. Again, depending upon your organization's adaptability to these processes and hierarchy, however they are built within your organizations, it relates to more to that than the standardization. But yes, whenever you have 2 projects under your belt, you are leading 2 projects, you are a program manager or a senior project manager. Now that's how it happens.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Most no problem. Now let's start with the how to plan scope management. This is like umbrella activity, what we've considered in our even integration project management knowledge area. So the inputs are project charter. So project charter is basically a project familiarization document, including all the agreements, penalty clause, various contract you did with that same client. Then we have a project management plan. Here we normally start with quality management plan, project life cycle description, and development approach. Quality management plan specifically talk about what type of standardization have you chosen in terms of templatization, in terms of audit procedure, review procedures, and these are normally finalizing these quality management plans, which more or less talks about the organizational process assets. These are all help us to basically execute the project more effectively, efficiently. And then there's a project life cycle description. Here we talk about which type of project life cycle decisions have you taken. Are we going with waterfall? Are we going with agile scrum? Are we going with scaled agile? And all these decisions are being decided whenever you start planning the scope. Then development approach. Again, what type of development approach are we going to take? How long will be the sprint in case you have defined agile sprint? How long will the phase in terms of waterfall? And what all things to be included? Do we have a phase closure audit? Do we have a sprint closure audit? We have a sprint review meeting. But in agile, they have not mentioned that the artifact has to be created for each of these things. So for that, you might need a review meeting to create those artifacts, or basically collect those learning for a particular development approach you've chosen. And then we have enterprise environmental factor and organizational process assets to help us out to build this plan scope management document. Normally, this document is a Word file where we just include these all these 3-4 details to make sure we have zeroed down, or we have built any uniformity for our planning scope managements. The tools and techniques are expert judgment, where SME and COEs are going to help us out. Are we understood the requirement in conciseness, or do we need some extra detailing from the client, and then how to do it? Then there are data analysis, where we do go over to the alternative analysis. These alternative analysis are a kind of repetitive process. So this alternative analysis, whatever you've done for integration management, can be utilized here. So the artifacts can be utilized here also. These are all common processes we do execute for a given project. And then there are these meetings. So there's no distinction in terms of if the meeting is for integration management or scope management. It's the same meeting we can refer to, and we can get all these nook and corners addressed effectively. But they've segregated this knowledge area just to understand what are the topic we need to consider as a crucial, and how we address these various pitfall or nook and corners of these processes, which are to be completed religiously with our full attention. The outputs are scope management plan and requirement management plan. Now, scope management plan talks about a kind of Word document where we have all these scopes in terms of which quality management plan, templatization have you chosen, which type of project life cycle you have adopted, is a mix and match, hybrid also, which type of development approach have you chosen, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, you might have requirement management plan where you normally manage your requirement. This is normally referred as a requirement list or requirement register. Here we normally have a list of requirement. Their decomposition means we are not started on decomposition as such, but we have a list of requirement. Their priority, this has to be developed first, this has to be developed before such and such date, and so on and so forth. These are the client stakeholder who have raised this requirement. These are more the inputs taken from the list of requirement as and the requirement traceability matrix as well. So this is what the requirement management plan in totality. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes. So I have a quick question about the scope management plan. Like, as far as I understand, like it should be a document which we will share it with our team or with our our company. But is it possible if a client is asking to share the scope management plan as well? Like what exactly the scope we have decided? Do we need to share this document with the client just for the satisfaction, or it's just only for our own internal team members only?
Sure. A great question. Let me ask you, and this is a normal confusion we do have. Let me ask you, if somebody, let's say, is going to give you $1,000 to build a bike for him, bike in the sense bicycle, let's say, with the gears and everything. Now, should you tell him like I'll take 5 days to assemble this bike? What do you think? Should we tell the person who is giving you $1,000 to create a bike, to assemble a bike? What do you think? Or will he ask, hey, say, sir, how many days do you take, and why do you take 5 days?
I mean, I think we are answerable for this question.
Perfect.
I guess as a working organization, we are working for them.
That's why normally scope is shared with the client. So the requirements, so the even work breakdown section as well, where client approves it, client sanction it. If there any gap, anything missing, he or she, the client might add it to it. And that's why all these scopes are basically shared, approved, sanctioned by the client. Even list of requirements sanctioned by the client. Okay.
Okay.
It was a great question, and everybody should have an answer to this. And these type of challenging questions we might come across whenever we normally do the scope management. Okay. Now this is a kind of overall how scope management works. These type of diagrams are also given in the PMI PMbook. Please have a look at these. They categorize these inputs and then they build a kind of outputs whatever we require. So if you prefer these kind of input output diagram, these type of diagrams are given in PMbook. So please do refer to them. Okay. Collect requirement. Let me check out the time. Okay, let's have a group overview of collect requirements, and we'll address this in our next session. So collect requirements talk about, as we normally discussed, validate requirements, because requirements are collected by the business analyst team. Are you with me? Could you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Yeah. So in today's modern world, we normally consider validate requirement as the right label for these things. So validate requirement. The inputs are, of course, the project charter, where we have a core project objective and subsidiary project objective mentioned there. Then the different management plan. We have started on scope management plan, requirement management plan, and stakeholder engagement plan, or a kind of stakeholder list. You can understand this as a list. Requirement management plan, you can read this as a list of requirement and requirement traceability matrix. Stakeholder engagement plan is a stakeholder register, where I normally mention all these stakeholders, specifically the clients, where I will mention what is the best time to talk, what is the best tool to talk, and what are the requirements he or she having the authority to sanction as well. Because that makes me proactively work with these guys if they have any confusion, contradiction in terms of understanding those requirements or any addition to those requirements. The project documents we consider input to validate requirements are assumption log, lessons learned register, and a stakeholder register. Assumption log, specifically whatever you assume. I might assume the web page might have a green color. But there are so many shades in green color. Which green color has to be applied? Well, I need to get it clarified from the client, clarified from the respective stakeholder, who is a kind of UI UX representative from a client side. He know which type of green is suitable for their web page, and then he or she might give you an exact number to be included in your program as well. Some sort of a exact match to their whatever requirement is given, and this is how we match it exactly. Then we have a lessons learned register. What type of obstacles we had with these client for validating requirements, sanction requirement, approval of requirement? Should we have to walk down some extra mile for certain persons, and so on and so forth? So that's how we normally refer to such projects in terms of how last execution with such client, if we had, how we have addressed those challenges, and we might get the work done in a few hours than the large number of efforts we took it for in our last project. The stakeholder register, as we just discussed, we talk about any and all stakeholders who have sanctioning authority. We have to work with them on one-on-one if need or if possible, and get the sanction proactively. So whatever you think in terms of this might be the requirement, you might need to get validated from that stakeholder, from that client. The overall business case, and here we are talking about the core objective of project product solution delivery, where we validate all such requirements against those core objective. Is it an inclusion? Is it addition? And these differences make our project make or break as well, because client want world. When they let you build a bicycle, the client might assume that the bicycle will be the most efficient, well-oiled machinery. I have to paddle very little, and I might travel miles together, and so on and so forth. But on the ground, we need to make sure the client understand what are we talking about. You're talking about the economical parts. So these economical parts are not so great in terms of efficiency, smoothness, and all those things. And then we build our syncing with the client, syncing with the stakeholder on what you're doing, what he's expected are the same thing. And then we have different agreements, specifically the penalty clauses we need to understand in terms of scheduled delivery by the client. How we could do it? Do we need more resources? Are we working? Could we get it executed with the same resources, whatever we have? We need to study, we need to understand the scope, and we need to basically address these if there are any shortfall of resources as well. Resources in terms of humans, raw material, and machines. Then of course we have enterprise environmental factors and organizational process asset help us to build the better project plan, more practical project plan, so that we stick to our project plan wherever we go, however we progress. In terms of tools and techniques, we do have expert judgment to help us out to build better validate better scopes. Then we have data gathering in terms of brainstorming, interviews, focus group, questionnaires and survey, and benchmarking. In terms of brainstorming, we sit with the client, we plan a meeting, might be a Google Meet or Zoom Meet or a personal meet as well, where we discuss these things. So this is why I understood when you say I need a bicycle. So bicycle, and you might say you might clarify within meeting. So it has a two wheels. Yes, it has an does it has an electric motor, or is a manual bicycle? How many gears are required? What type of frame are we looking for? Iron, carbon, composite, mix, and all these things has to be cleared in terms of discussions or over the table. And you can have an interview also. You might have a single one-on-one in meeting. You might have a focus group. So you go to such person, go to the such stakeholder with the SME who might have built this bicycle before. You might have questionnaire and surveys as well. If the client is residing in different continent, you might have a questionnaire and surveys developed and published on a web page or a Google form, and ask that person to address that to fill in that Google form at his leisure within so many hours, and so on and so forth. Then benchmarking in terms of how often we should have a requirement review, once a week, once a day. Again, depending upon your client stakeholder, you need to plan it out or make sure whatever you delivered, is it fine with the client? So after delivery, after a few hours, you might check with the stakeholder saying, this is what we delivered. Have you checked it out? Is it according to your expectation? Do you need any changes? And so on and so forth. Then we have a document analysis also. Whatever documents given by the client. There are various documents given by the stakeholder in terms of their supporting analysis they've done earlier. And these documents do help us out up to a great extent. And we need to understand how these documents are to be converted in terms of the requirement clarification. And that's how a project manager will work with the business analyst team as well as the designers and architect to make sure you address all the nook and corners of the requirement, or you develop the requirement to its completeness. Again, we have decision making process. Here we might have used voting or multi-criteria decision analysis, depending upon the need of the policy and process, or depending upon need of the requirement and the analysis process requirement, we might choose either of them. Then there are data representation in terms of affinity diagram or a mind mapping. We have learned mind mapping in our business analysis capsule, right? And the affinity diagrams are basically a kind of advanced activity diagrams where you normally draw these workflows for a complicated requirements. And of course, we have to have, as a project manager, certain behavioral skill, which is a need of the hour. Where we have something like nominal group technique, where we delegate our work, plus we nominate some sort of a group to take care of such thing. Something like, in case we need more elaboration on a given requirement, who should be in charge in terms of coordinating with the client. We might label a resource. So Ravindra can coordinate with such and such client if they have some challenges in understanding the complete requirement. We might do observation and conversation also. So we might go in actual places like the enhancement of attendance management system. One of my team lead, project lead, or me myself as a project manager might go to one of the offices, nearby offices at a state farm, and try to understand how they are doing in terms of their attendance management system, what is actually needed by them, and then facilitate on those things, put those points for discussions, and get your requirement completed in terms of various contexts, in terms of various challenges within their specific offices or specific timelines as well. And that's how this context diagram normally refer to an activity with some sort of a context, with some sort of a prerequisite. That's what we need to consider whenever we planning such requirement or validating such requirement. We might build a prototype. Prototype is called proof of concept. So in terms of very mission critical or cost critical type of projects, we might do a prototype. Like, let's say, driverless car. You don't create thousands of driverless car because the driverless cars are still not matured enough. So what you do, you start with a single car. You normally build that car. You normally try to understand how it's performing. Same thing with the robotics. Same thing with the really mission critical project like US military project. You want to check out certain specific terrain for a new military camp, new military base. So what you do, you send some drone, you send some land analyze individuals or scientists and so on and so forth, and you do some sort of a small part of that thing, analyzed, explained, or built, and then you normally start planning the bigger project. That's why prototypes are very crucial for such mission critical, cost critical type of projects. And then the outputs are requirement documentation, of course, the list of requirement with priority, scenario, and a breakdown, which we're going to learn in requirement breakdown structure as well. And then requirement traceability matrix, where we normally include all these origination of a requirement till the feature list, product list to be included in the product, project, solution, support services. So these are all basically kind of validate requirements we are talking about. Is it according to your thought processes? Anything which I could explain better? Any kind of confusion?
No, sir.
They're good, right? Thank you, Saji. So this way we'll basically even look at this collect requirement, because this is one of the most crucial thing. If you had a look at history of project management failure, maximum failures are due to the requirement creep or requirement is not understood by the manager, designer, architect clearly. And that's why the new modern project management processes stressed at a great level in terms of building this requirement or working with better requirement management day by day. So whoever works on a project with a client, same project manager is normally carry forward, because he do know the stakeholders, he do know how to respond to a person in terms of his personality, personal abilities, and so on and so forth. That's why the same project manager normally handles the engagement with couple of projects, and that's how we normally get career progression within ourselves as well. Okay. Let's take define scope in our next session. We will not have our Saturday session. Okay, I have a kind of prior engagement, so let's meet again on Tuesdays. Okay, and we might there's another question for you. Could we make this session 2 hours rather than 1.5 hour session, for at least
2
couple
hours on Tuesday?
Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's actually better, because you want to skip Saturdays?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm for that. Because
Anybody else have any
Saturdays,
problem? Should we
everybody has
start
got
half hour
many
early?
other.
Yeah. Should we start half hour early, or should we should we delay it by half an hour?
No. But I even want to go from 8:30 to 10:30. That's better, if everybody is okay with that.
Yes, that's why I'm asking. Yes.
Because
Thanks.
I have to go to work by like 6 o'clock, so I get up at like 4:30.
Mhm.
I mean, if it is okay with others, if it's not inconvenient for them,
If it's
8:30 to 10:30,
8:30
I would prefer that.
Sure. Yes,
I
please.
mean, either way,
Eastern time,
8 to 10.
I'm
Yeah.
okay.
So you are fine with half an hour early start?
Yeah.
Tuesdays I have class from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., which is PST.
Ma'am, that will be a night for me. I'm in India.
Yeah.
So I think 8:30 is good. I can't go prior to that, because it's
No.
6:30
I'm
here and
calling
I need to
PST.
study, right? Sorry?
Yeah, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. EST. I have class, so I won't be able to attend before that.
Oh, you have another session, another class, ma'am?
Yeah, I had informed you earlier
Okay,
on
okay.
Tuesday.
Okay. Oh. Mhm.
That's why I used to attend the class only half an hour delay on Tuesdays.
Or what about other days, like Mondays and
I'm
Wednesdays?
I'm okay with any other days, because it's only on Tuesdays I have class.
Oh boy.
Oh. So we can't start.
Mandaji,
Anybody else have challenge in terms of starting half an hour early?
I don't
No.
have any issues.
Yes,
But
Prashant.
later is definitely not, because I won't
Yeah, I
have
can
enough sleep
understand.
to get to work.
Yeah.
Half an hour early is better actually for me too.
Shruti ma'am, could you request for change for that class? What type of class do you have there, ma'am? Is it GuruSchools?
No, it's not GuruSchools.
Okay.
I cannot, because it's fixed since long time. Yeah.
Oh man.
What
I'm
about
free on any other days. I'm free on any other days, but it's only on
Yes.
Tuesdays I'm having the class.
Oh. Monday is still right. Tuesday you have problem. Okay. Let me check with Prerna ma'am as well, because how does she feel, and let's discuss in our next session basically. If it's going to start early, let me I'll let you know on Tuesdays. Yeah, I'm struggling a bit of time crunch here, but yeah, let's work it out. Let's keep it open right now, and we'll discuss in our next session. Okay, sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for your time. Have a good night.
yeah,
Bye bye. Take care.
good night, bye.
Thank you.